Hi, this is Benoy Thanjan, your host of the Solar Maverick Podcast, and also the founder and CEO of Renew Energy. Renew Energy, we're a solar developer and consulting firm. We've developed more than 100 megawatts of solar projects across the U.S., and we help clients execute clean energy projects with confidence. We act as your owner's rep, overseeing developers, EPCs, and financing partners to de-risk your project and keep it on schedule. We also provide development as a service, supporting origination strategy and execution so you can advance projects without building a large internal team. On the renewable energy credit side, we offer REC brokerage, REC asset management, and custom renewable energy credit research, helping clients understand pricing, policy shifts, and long-term market dynamics. In addition, we provide new market analysis and financial modeling to evaluate opportunities, assess project viability, and support investment decisions. To learn more, reach out at info@renewenergy.com. That's info at reneuenergy.com. We'll also have information on the notes of the podcast as well. Let's get into it.
Honestly, the biggest difference between construction and solar is that there is no difference. It is construction. And I think when you simplify the objective, you get a better sense of how you want to approach it. And I think that in itself has helped me go from just construction to construction again. But we'll call it solar in this case.
Hello and welcome to the Solar Maverick Podcast, where solar meets entrepreneurship and experience. I'm your host, Benoy Thanjan, so let's get into it.
Welcome to the Solar Maverick Podcast. This is Benoy Thanjan. I'm excited to have on this episode of the podcast Abu Riaz. He's the CEO and founder of AMS Renewables. We're actually at their beautiful office in White Plains. I appreciate my previous conversations with Abu, and welcome to the podcast. I think there's so much great information and knowledge from your experience, and our podcast is about solar and entrepreneurship. So it'd be great, obviously, to learn about AMS Renewable Energy and the amazing work you're doing, but also your entrepreneurship story, which I don't know much about, but I'm excited to learn about today. It would be great if you could start off with talking about, if our audience is not familiar with AMS Renewables and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Benoit. Appreciate the time you're taking on to talk to us. Yeah, just a little bit about AMS Renewable Energy. We started the inception around 2018. We were, and we still are, AMS Construction is the parent company. It's a general construction company in New York City, and we do all types of general construction work within the city and outside of the city. AMS Renewable just came about by mistake. We got introduced to someone, CEO of GS Power, and he actually asked us to do roofing projects for him. And one thing led to another, and I just got interested in solar. And we did those projects, then we just became mechanical installers for Swinnerton, GS, SES, we did some work for. And after that, it just became more interesting. And I was like, I think we could do this because we already have a renewable energy. We're a startup, but we're not a startup in general. So with the experience of construction, so it was an easy flow to get into the business. For us, obviously, there's challenges once you start projects, but I've never been one to hold myself back or, shy away from anything. And we're growing at a rapid pace, and it just comes back to just my upbringing and having a chip on my shoulder and making sure that I'm going to do whatever I say I will do, and just kept pushing along.
This is actually coming back to me. We had that conversation a few years ago about how you started the company. Can you talk about like some of the recent projects that you've done? I know, I've seen on the website and on LinkedIn, you post about them. It's different types of projects.
Yeah.
On the solar side.
Yeah. So we started in the C&I world. We started on just rooftop projects and went from rooftop projects to getting an opportunity to get a portfolio of ground mounts. We openly told the client at the time that ground mounts is something that we had never completed. And just my experience, and I guess I sold it well at that time. And he gave us the opportunity on the ground mount, side of the business. And right now, actively, we are doing close to, or over now, or 100 megawatts where we are finishing up close to 25 this year, and 75 of it is going to be all next year. And then we already have a bunch of other projects that are well into 2027 PTOs. So we went from like a small C&I 2 megawatt shop to like getting large community solar 2 to 20 megawatt range projects. We geographically are working only in New York and Texas right now, but actively have projects that are going to begin in other states as well: Illinois, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. And then also, I don't consider tri-state area. I consider all of it New York at this point because it's just close enough to us to grab, right? But
For sure.
we're growing fast. We're looking at a lot of stuff, and we just have gone through a transition. And the team, there's been turnover on the team. And, I want to just shout out our COO that passed away. He built a good team, and, we're trying to make sure we keep moving forward on what he believed on.
Yeah, definitely. It's an amazing story because I think the last time we spoke, you were really focused on CNI. So that's amazing to hear, like the pipeline and how much you're constructing in solar with that large community solar portfolio that you mentioned. And obviously you're aggressively going into certain states that you mentioned. Obviously you come from a construction background. Can you talk about like the differences? I'm curious of constructing a solar project compared to other different construction projects that you worked on. I think it's interesting too that you obviously you never did ground mounted system. What was like the transition from doing like CNI construction and then?
Honestly, the biggest difference between construction and solar is that there is no difference. It is construction. And I think when you simplify the objective, you get a better sense of how you want to approach it. Mm-hmm. And I think that in itself has helped me go from just construction to construction again. But we'll call it solar in this case, right? One of the biggest hurdles for us internally were understanding the cash needed on a solar project against a construction project and how front-loaded the projects are financial-wise.
Sure.
And where construction, projects, they go through ebbs and flows of this life cycle of the project, where at times there'll be a large financial, you'll need a lot more money in the beginning, but in the middle you might not. At the end you might need money to finish the project. But solar, it seems like it's all in the beginning. Mm-hmm. You need to order everything, long lead items, all this stuff. But going back to your question, the differences between construction and solar, I think one thing that helped me understand solar better was just that organization is the biggest key.
Sure.
Organizing a project and its workflows, where in construction you have maybe 10 trades to 15 trades on a job. Solar, you might only have it 4. So it was easier for us to get into solar because it was actually less trades to use to complete the project. And construction, we're used to having 10 to 20 trades on a specific project at a time. So that was a little easier. Both industries have their nuances, and you have to figure out how you fit in and how you can make the system better. And that's something that, we're still learning, right?
For sure.
We don't tell ourselves we're the best at what we do, but we tell ourselves we're going to be the most honest, and we will bring in capable people and completing the project.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And then it's interesting, you mentioned like paying up front. Are you talking about like bonding capacity? Or are you talking about to qualify for the investment tax credit, especially with safe harboring and, foreign entity is concerned? Or are you talking about other things?
I think financially, I'm talking about as an EPC that gets brought into a project. Some of the projects that we have brought in, we've had to procure all the equipment, and the only equipment that we weren't procuring was the modules.
Okay.
So to be able to complete these projects on time, you have to procure a lot of those items NTP. And the amount of money you need at NTP for deposits and all this other stuff is a lot higher than what I was used to on the construction side. Mm-hmm. Because on construction, if you just go through a natural build of, say, a building, you're doing the excavating foundations, then you have the MEPs get involved in that. But, it doesn't happen at once. Where in the solar, it seems like it happens at
one time.
Yeah. So that's the biggest difference. I mean, The bonding capacity for us, we were fortunate enough to have AMS Construction be the backers.
Oh, that's
financial, our profit, our balance sheet and P&L. We weren't a startup in normal terms.
definitely.
We had the backing of AMS Construction to be able to get to this point a lot faster than anyone else. Meanwhile, we have no investors on board.
Sure.
It's only me. So it's a lot less red tape also to be able to flow through some of the intricacies of a project and like contract negotiations. There's not a lot more people telling me what to do. That's this word.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually great that you explained it. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Obviously, like most like clean energy companies have raised outside capital, and for you to be the sole owner and the primary, that gives like a competitive advantage when it comes to construction of projects and obviously approving certain things that allow you to differentiate from your competition. So I really appreciate you explaining that. And then, obviously you mentioned about Vincent Coletti, and, my condolences for, his passing away, and you purchased his company, right? Like what was like the strategy behind that?
I'll say this. I think, and I tell the team this all the time, right? Sometimes there's a plan that you set up on paper, on a wall, or wherever you think. But the amount of times you start making left and right turns to get to that finish line might not be what you thought of, or might be what you needed. And I always say at some point, I'm getting paid what I'm getting paid because, we all have problems that we have to combat or, complete. And our title and our pay scale, if you want to say it, is to make the simplest approach and come up with solutions to any problem. If there's problems, just come up with solutions. And going to Vinny and how we purchased him, we ended up getting the portfolio projects. We needed to start them.
Mm-hmm.
We needed machinery. We just got introduced to a person that was on his way out of the business because he was a subcontractor. And like I said about the financial risks, a lot of these subcontractors take. He just got tired of how long it took to get paid sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
And, he was a single business owner. And the conversation just was very simple. Hey, I'm trying to sell this equipment. Do you want it? And I was like, yes. But then I asked him, what are you doing next?
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, he's like, I'm not sure yet. I was like, why don't you come to my side? And I always say this to everybody. I always say, you want to come to the dark side. And I use that term because I think everyone in the solar industry has mischaracterized who I am. And I'll say that because I have been told that I'm not. I'll say this in a different way. I feel like a lot of the solar industries, we call them finance bros, where there's these financial guys that come from private equity or hedge funds that they think they know construction. Now, I do have a finance and math degree, so I understand the numbers, and I think that's what interested me in solar so much.
Yeah.
But I think me having the construction understanding helped alleviate my issues of entering the business, because if you come from a numbers background, all you look at is spreadsheets. You don't know what's going on in the field. And I understand that. So me being able to translate those problems to a client is a lot easier because I understand the numbers. I understand what they're looking at, and I understand what the people are on the site are dealing with. So anyways, going back, so I'm getting sidetracked now. It's almost like I'm talking crap about the solar industry, but I'm not. But Vinny, I asked him, I was like, hey, I need someone to come on, become head of construction. And is that something you'll be interested in? One conversation led to another. He came on board and he helped develop the team that he wanted to be able to finish projects from start to finish, and set up the different departments. And that's something that, we are very thankful for what he did for us. Me and him had larger goals, and, everyone on the team understands what our goals were, and we're still moving forward, in his spirit to say like, hey, we're doing this for you also because we know you wouldn't quit because you never quit on us.
Yeah, definitely.
So we miss him. He was a very important part of the business. I'm going to keep it at that. But, it's very hard to move on and try to transition also, and making sure that the clients are happy, making sure the team is like working. It's not an easy thing. Like, I'll tell you this. I was listening to Elon Musk's interview once, and he was saying, what does a CEO do all day? And he basically said, it's like eating shards of glass all day long and just fixing problems. And that's what I try to do. I mean, it's just fixing problems. And that's what I say, like, going back to what I said originally, we get paid what we get paid because we are here to fix problems. And that's all it is.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a huge thing that you mentioned is that you understand the concepts of finance, but then you also have that construction background. I think that's a big differentiator in the industry. As you mentioned, like there's a lot of, as you call finance pros or private equity guys or, finance people who come into the industry, but they have no experience actually running or building a project. They're just looking at spreadsheets. I mean, that's a really important point and differentiator of why you've been successful and been able to grow the business is.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that. It's also very hard for a construction person to explain to an expert what's going on in the field.
Yeah.
So try to connect the two is not the easiest thing in the world to do, correct? So,
Oh, definitely.
That's where I've had a little bit of an easy transition and trying to navigate both sides and avoid the landmines as I've been walking through them. So that has been essential in our growth from going from, I guess, 0 to 100 real fast, right?
That's really
that's been very helpful. It's just experience, to have more experience throughout the years. I've been around the construction business my whole life, and it's, just number. And numbers are something that I've always been interested in just because, that's something I went to college for
sure.
So, like, it was an easier transition than I thought. I mean, I think I'm simplifying how easy it seems. It's not easy. There's a disclaimer on the bottom, be aware. But I got to keep a cool head for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
If I look stressed, then how they're going to be able to operate. That's my key.
That's a huge thing about being a successful CEO is to be able to manage your emotions, and everyone's obviously, you're kind of the cue for the rest of the team. So that's huge.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting. You went to Columbia for, I think, finance and economics. Is that
Math.
correct? Oh, math. I apologize. You said that before. Like, what got you interested in construction? Is it through family or is it?
Well, a lot of my family members are in construction. My dad started the business, and I never thought I'd be in the construction business from the get-go. Once I finished undergrad, I went to work for Barclays Bank, and I was working on the macroeconomic currency side as an analyst.
Mhm.
And, I was working with Asian markets and American and the US dollar. And I realized once I did the math of how much money I was making per hour based off the hours I spent there, I was probably making less than minimum wage.
Yes.
This was around the time when the crash of 2008 happened. So we were just getting overworked at that time. And it just, I came home one day and my dad was like, hey, you want to come work for me? I was like, absolutely not. You're crazy. I don't want to be crazy. And then, I thought about it. It's like, growing up, I've been around the business. I used to work in the summer with my dad, but probably some of my cousins. We all used to do something. So we were hands-on too. Like, I didn't come from a construction background where I just saw people build it. I've sat in a truck. I've sat in operating machines. Like, I've done it all to a certain extent. Like, I still go on the construction side. We do a lot of facade work in the city. I've been on the side of a building hanging 30 stories up. So it's like, it's just, I think I've always been someone that didn't want to be stuck in an office all day long looking at screens and be someone that sees different architectures, see different, vantage points. It's places where people would always want to be, and I get to do it for a job. So it's very cool to be able to say, like, if you talk about athletes, they get paid to do this. So I get paid to go on buildings, go in different areas of the world to build stuff. So cool to look at it like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's obviously a great experience. And then obviously being exposed to construction from an early age through your dad's business, I'm sure is really helpful. Can you talk about too, like maybe how that's helped you become a more successful entrepreneur, having like a dad who's had their own company? You've seen how challenging it is, right? And what he's gone through. And you decided to take that path when you actually try to do like a corporate finance sort of career at Barclays and then.
Yeah. So One of the things that I've always remembered in the back of my head, he said to me, he's like, it takes a long time to build up respect and it takes a second to lose it.
Yeah.
Don't ever lose the respect from anyone because, you don't want to be that guy that everyone talks about, like, hey, he ripped us off. And the industry construction of solar is very cutthroat. You have to, like I said before, avoid the landmines as much as you can. It's very tough to navigate a business where there are bad people out there. And you could say that could start from the vendors all the way up to the developers. Someone is out there to screw you over. And it could be intentional, unintentional, or you could become collateral damage at times. And how to avoid all of that is something that you just build with experience. But my dad has always just instilled in me, be honest, be truthful, do what you're going to say, and stick with it.
Yeah.
And have I lost money? Oh, yeah. Like, I've lost money. I have failed more times than I can think at this point, but every failure has led me to becoming better. What I don't do is make the same mistake over and over again.
Yes.
Right? They say that's the definition of insanity.
For sure.
I don't do that. I try to get better. And, the team knows that, I won't allow a mistake maybe more than 2 times. Because then, either I'm the dumb one or I'm getting played. So which one is it? So, I take that approach. I think growing up in the Bronx, also going to high school on Castle Hill, you get the street smart. You get to know, always look over your shoulder, always know your environment, always know who's watching or not watching. That has helped also, right? Like, I would say sometimes to be able to get to great levels, you got to pop that bubble and walk out of it and just wait for all the hicks to come and see if you could stand up to it. That's it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these are like great advice, that obviously, your dad provided and you're providing, and me being an entrepreneur, like I'm learning from hearing your story, and I appreciate you being so transparent and sharing. To change it up a little bit is like, have you started working on storage or storage, solar plus storage? What do you see as like the opportunity? Obviously, with the big, beautiful bill being passed, now every developer is saying that they're doing storage. And from a EPC perspective, are you seeing a lot more opportunity in the storage space?
Yeah, so we have gotten more opportunities to bid on solar plus BESS or just BESS standalone.
Yes.
And that has come from just the current environments of when that beautiful bill got passed and how the tax credits are going to get affected. And it seems like batteries are a little further out than solar tax credits are. We are actively adding that as another department of our in-house capabilities to be able to complete those projects. We got the right people. I mean, some of the people, like I say, I think this bill, I think, has helped certain companies and affected others. I think larger EPC firms have had to close or, had to file Chapter 11. And that just became, they were just too big at the wrong time.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm on the opposite end where I am growing and filling in that gap of those size projects that they're not below a megawatt, where a lot of EPCs are out there.
That's true.
And they're above that 1 megawatt range or even 2 megawatt community solar. Like, there's not that many of us out there. That's why this industry is very small.
Yeah.
So one advantage that has come about is pinpointing the people that can actually complete the work. So, I've taken certain people from Mill Creek Renewables that went under. We have a new president coming in from Pine Gate.
Oh, interesting.
So, like, I'm picking and watching the industry and seeing who I could pick off, because not that I'm poaching them, because they got let go.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm taking the opportunity to get across the line on the other side of this 2027 deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, from my perspective, I think the industry in a whole had a flash in the pan type moment where there was a couple of years of overdevelopment.
Yes.
Because people were trying to cash in on some of these credits. And, it became a side of the business where if you needed a subsidy to keep this business or this industry afloat, that's not a good industry to be in.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that, do I agree with everything that the administration has done so far? No. Do I agree with parts of it? Yeah, I think like you have to look at both sides. And if you want this industry to get bigger, better, I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think this bill will show who the real players are. And unfortunately, like I said, there's always collateral damage.
And definitely.
You have these big EPCs that were too big at the wrong time and they got affected. I think, there's opportunity to get nimbler and smaller, right? Like you're going to start seeing the term too big to fail. I think there's not a term that doesn't exist. It exists. What happens? So I think the industry will always grow. I think that we need to be cognizant about other industries and how we portray the renewable industry in itself, because I think the messaging could be better. I think that we come off as saviors, but we're not saviors. We should add one more aspect to how to make the future of our kids better.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, sometimes the messaging can be very one-sided, where it's like it's a doomsday scenario every turn.
Yeah.
And that I think I've already seen certain larger companies rebrand because I think they're worried about how the tax credit bill has affected them. And I think they're going into the next phase of what this industry is. But things need to happen. Things need to be shaken up, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, there's so many great points, and obviously in these challenges, there are opportunities, right? As you mentioned, and small, nimbler players, and obviously there's great talent that's out there as well, right? To take advantage of that. I mean, there's so many great points that you mentioned. Can you also talk about I don't know, has like safe harboring and, purchasing of equipment and fiat, which we haven't had like guidance, which is the foreign entity of concern specifically, you can't have certain things from China or ownership. Has that impacted your business, or is that something?
So we have had a couple of vendors that were on our AVL now had to be taken off because we need to do much thorough due diligence on them and figure out if they are going to be compliant. I think it has become a road bump, but I don't think it's become a wall in front of us that we can't go through, right? Sure. We are, actively engaging, vendors. We're engaging all the data that we see, online through the government entities. We're trying to understand what it all means. And I don't think we're behind. I think we're following it as everyone else is. And information is key in life, right?
Oh, for sure.
So that's what we're doing. So, I mean, to answer your question directly, not really. I haven't seen it. I mean, I'm more on the side of just procuring those items. I'm not really on the supply chain on the other side. So for me, it's not a big deal. Right?
For sure. That makes sense. Yeah, because if you're supplying the equipment.
I think the industry, like I said before, the industry in a whole needed the reset button. And I think we all needed to become better, because I think it became who could grab the cash the fastest. And I think we need to get away from that a little bit. And if our messaging is to make a better planet for our kids, then let's do it the right way.
Right.
I'm sure they talk about how much it costs to build a solar system in Australia. It's absurd if you look at those numbers and you're like, why does it cost us so much here? Well, there's a lot of attributes to that cost. One being government tariffs, another being margins on what we have to pay for the equipment, because it might have been white labeled equipment from one firm to another firm to a fourth firm, prevailing wage requirements. There's a lot of stuff that can we find the 30% that we're losing? Maybe. Time will tell that. That's going to affect everything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I interviewed an Australian company and it was just crazy how much cheaper, almost like below $1 per watt to install projects. And then the other thing too, like I've heard from other people as well, and I've seen it, is like people taking excess margin, and like customer acquisition costs or any other way. So obviously people are more disciplined and obviously not trying to gouge the customer. And
there's a lot to be said there. I think this will also, I call it, you'll see who's fake and who's not.
For sure.
That's the industry, especially with this whole OBB that was passed. And I think there is a lot out there to be questioned, business practices in itself. I mean, I'll tell you this. I have seen more in the last 4 years that could be better in this business than I've seen in construction. And I guess it's because construction obviously is far more. I mean, if you talk about time, just construction's been around for so long, and solar is still relatively new.
Yeah, definitely.
Like when did solar, like obviously you could go back, but when did it become mainstream solar?
Sure.
And has that been 10 years only?
That's only been 10 years, 15 years.
So, I think you could go back. You could point to a lot of problems, but like, let's get past that and see how we can fix it. And I think this bill might wake up a lot of people and will show the true colors of what the industry is.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, definitely it has woken up a lot of people for sure. And obviously, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of bankruptcies, companies filing for Chapter 11, and we're probably going to continue seeing more. Like Pinegate was in the beginning of November.
Sure.
But I'm hearing from a lot of, companies too, that once this rush for 2025 happens, we'll see too. I think we're going to hear more about it. You talked actually about a lot of different trends in solar already, but are there any trends that you haven't talked about that you think, I mean, you've talked about several different ones, but is there anything that you haven't talked about that you think?
I think one of the biggest differences between construction and solar is when I get a project on the construction side, a lot of that project is already engineered and designed.
Yes.
I just go bid what's on that plan.
The specs, yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns on the solar side where you'll only get like a 30% design, and you still have to go finish a lot of the painstaking work to be able to get that project to NTP. I think one issue that I see and a trend that's getting better is developers are starting to understand that there is far more risk involved to an EPC that they need to also be responsible for, and they can't just let EPCs hold the burden every turn. And I think one trend I am seeing is EPCs fighting back more on certain conditions. In ground mounts, I could say subsurface risk is more.
Sure. Interesting.
So I think as a whole, the industry also, I think, is leaning where we need to be more concerned with the actual build, that we need to be concerned with the numbers that system is going to produce. I think, sale pitch has always been, well, I could say, well, if you're going to put 100 megawatt system here, this is how much ton you're going to get, this is how much money you're going to make. Well, no, you're trying to make the system last 20 to 25 years. What you do in the beginning will create that climate of if that system is going to last 5 years or 25 years. And I think one of the biggest things is asking questions. And we are getting a lot better at asking those questions, if that's to the developers or even just certain vendors. Because at the end of the day, as an EPC, what we really are the middlemen between the vendors that we procure from to the developers that we build for.
Sure.
So we need to be very thorough in our investigation of what we're buying. Like, we have to explain very well of what we're giving to the client so that everyone understands the risks that is involved between whichever way you go. So I think that is a trend I'm seeing that's better and getting better.
Yeah, that's an interesting trend because, what we're seeing on a lot of systems is underperformance because like that due diligence in the beginning, right, hasn't been done, or, you're using the right equipment to our vendors.
Right. I think that also comes back to my construction background.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't build a building that's going up 30 stories, and if it starts leaning an inch on the bottom, it's going to lean 4 inches, 4 feet maybe by the time it gets to the top.
Yeah.
So I think like if you look at solar the same way, just because your system says it's going to produce X amount of kilowatts per year doesn't mean it actually is.
Yeah.
What are you doing to navigate that problem?
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things that we're doing differently now is just asking more questions.
Yeah.
Because information, like I said, I'll go back to information is key to everything.
Yeah, for sure.
And keeping track of that information is something that we are internally getting better at. And it comes back from my persistence of knowing more. growing as much as I can, because that's how I make my decisions.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if I don't know anything, then what am I going to try and make a decision?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's a great point too, which is you would think was simple as that, to get as much information, to do enough due diligence, to ask the right questions, and then
And like, be able to have different departments be able to collaborate together.
yeah,
Because just because an engineer thinks one way doesn't mean the civil operator thinks that way also.
yeah,
It doesn't mean that the legal understands what both of them are saying. You are trying to be a symphony, if that's the easiest way to say it. And that is one of the biggest differences from construction and solar, is that symphony starts a lot earlier
yeah, definitely.
than what construction is. Because in construction, it's more set. Like, we know this person's going to come at this time. We know this person's going to do this.
Yeah,
And they're not really going to overlap, because the inspections get done so early that they're already done. But like, if you don't figure out a problem in solar from day one, that problem will rear its ugly head a lot further down the line. And you can't hide them. And I think a lot of companies, EPCs, we know this, they hide them. I've seen certain vendors hide the fact of what their product is capable of. And I think that is a rampant problem in this industry. And I think now this has just jolted the bad. And I think it might be something that either helps industry become better, or ask me in 5 years where this industry's headed, and I'll tell you then. But I honestly think I'm optimistic on where this industry is going. I think it's going to get leaner, and it's going to get meaner, and it's going to get a lot better. And I think we'll be able to get to the other side. I think there's not enough data that suggests that we don't need renewables. All the data says we need it. And I think re-messaging and re-identifying what we're trying to accomplish is one way to get better.
yeah. There's so many great points, and obviously the re-messaging too is another important one. What I really enjoyed was your last LinkedIn post. You already talked about some of these, but the rules for being successful.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting. I mean, I should actually print it out and have it on my desk to reread, because sometimes I forget these basic things. Can you talk about?
That was something that I just wrote to myself, as you see, in 2013.
Everything, yeah.
And, I'm a big believer in manifesting an idea. I think repeating certain things to yourself is a good way to become better at what you do. I say it very loudly. You keep thinking negatively, it will happen. And I think that, just part of what I wrote there was to assure myself that what I always thought in my head, I want to be able to read back to myself. Honestly, it's funny, like, people always bring this part, like this up, where they write something or they think of something years ago, and then I mistakenly found that on my phone, because I think I posted that to Instagram, and I don't have any social media anymore. And I was just looking at my pictures from the start of my camera roll, and it was like, that was there, and I showed my wife, like, look at this. This is cool. And it's cool to look back at, right? Like,
Yeah.
because before being a business owner, I am an entrepreneur. I want to build things. And I think, like, I have proven to myself that what I thought about in 2013 is possible. And, like, you know it yourself, like, growing up in New York City is not the easiest thing. And growing up in the Bronx, I think has also helped me, and my environment has helped me become agile enough to be able to run away from problems, but also smart enough to understand what are the problems and which ones aren't the problems. So it's like, sometimes you got to face the problem and, deal with it. And sometimes there might be problems that you aren't a part of, so you run away from them real fast. So it's been a process, So, but I think it's cool to look at something that you wrote a long time ago to yourself and see it more or less come to life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's almost like 12 years ago, and it's amazing. Obviously, the growth of AMS Renewables during this time, and even too, like, if you think about it, only the past few years too, like from being C&I to obviously building big ground-mounted portfolios. Is there anything else that we should know about AMS Renewables that we haven't spoken about?
I think that there's a lot to be said where we're getting better. And I think that we are going to become market makers in this market.
Yes.
I think we're going to go more national. And our goal is to go international at some point. The goal is to be able to give something to people that they need. And that's why I said this market and this industry won't just go away, because renewables is a necessity. So I want to show that we can become one of the big EPCs, and we can, do what we need to do for our clients and developers to be able to support how to make a better future for our kids. Because at the end of the day, yeah, everyone is making money from this right now, but what lasting effect are we going to have to all of this? And the lasting effect that I want to create is proof that it's possible. And that's what I came up with a quote by mistake, and I actually searched it up to see if I'm the only one that said it. So I said to my wife, after talking to her about a lot of different things, I was like, everyone thinks they could be everyone, but only a few can be someone. So I tell everyone in here, I was like, be someone, and be someone that changes the world. And I mean, we obviously see electricity is something that is not going away. So how do we produce more of it? And renewable energy is the way to produce more of it. And I think it's going to keep growing. So I don't see a big problem in the industry other than rebranding yourself. I think is the way to look at it.
Yeah, definitely. Those are great points. And it's about being someone and making a difference, and a difference for the positive, which is great. This has been an amazing interview. I appreciate you making the time. If our audience wanted to learn more about you or AMS Renewables, what is the best way for them to do it?
I think for someone to know more about us, I think we are going to be more, say it this way. We've stayed in the shadows for a long time on purpose because we wanted to quietly grow. And I think we are going to be more open to what we have completed, what we are doing. I think, anyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn if anyone has questions or anything. I'm open to talking to anyone. And I think at this point where I'm getting to and where we're going, I want to be able to give back to the kids out there that might hear this or like whatever, or even someone that is going from working for an EPC and always thought about starting a business. I'll say it's possible, man. Just go do it. And don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't. And I'll say this, one of the biggest quotes that I've always lived by, and I used to wear it on a dog tag, but I don't know where that dog tag went. Michael Jordan said on his Hall of Fame speech, limits like fears are often always an illusion. Don't ever limit yourself. Take fear as a obstacle that you're going to get past and go get to the stars, man. Go after it. And I think that's what I've always lived by, going after and not taking no for an answer. And that's something that I think it's important to understand.
Yeah, I mean, this is all great advice. I mean, the Solar Maverick Podcast is about solar and entrepreneurship, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, and we actually have a lot of young people as well, and then people who are interested in obviously transitioning to the field or even getting to the entrepreneurship. And I really feel like a lot of what you said is pretty inspirational, and too, like the mindset that you need to be as an entrepreneur. Unfortunately, like these skills that you're talking about, you don't really get taught in school. And I think this is great advice for anyone who's looking to get into entrepreneurship. So I appreciate you sharing your experiences. This has been an amazing interview. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Solar Maverick Podcast. The Solar Maverick Podcast is brought to you by Renew Energy. We're a solar development and consulting firm. If you believe that this podcast is adding value to you, please give us a 5-star review and share with those that you think could benefit from this information. Please email all questions, suggestions, and feedback to info@renewenergy.com. That's info@reneuenergy.com. The Solar Maverick Podcast is produced by Podcast Laundry and executive produced by Benoy Thanjan and Kevin Y. Brown.